I remember the day quite well. It was the first day of class during the spring semester of my final year, my senior year at Georgetown College. And I was already looking forward to graduation in May and entering Southern Seminary the next fall, but I still had some courses I needed to take, and I signed up for Dr. Vernon Mallow's Johannine Literature course. We were going to study the Gospel of John and 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. I had already taken every course that Vernon Mallow had to offer. He was a superb New Testament teacher. Learned so much from that man, indebted to him even up until this day. And I basically knew what to expect. I knew I was going to go in there, and he was going to require of us what he always required of his students: 3 tests and a final. And I knew if you took good notes, and I did, and you studied them well and listened in class, you could make an A. So I had it made. We went into class that day, and Dr. Mallow gave out the syllabus, and sure enough, there were going to be 3 tests and a final and 6 research papers, 1 every 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, Dr. Mallow, surely you're not expecting that of me, are you? If it had not been for Vernon Mallow, I would have dropped the course. Listen, I didn't need that. I was pastoring a church. I was finishing up my college career at Georgetown College. You've got to have oral exams in all of your fields of major study. Deborah and I were married. We were still working part-time on the farm. I didn't need this, but it was Vernon Mallow, so I decided that I would stick with it. But surely, Dr. Mallow, surely you're asking too much, aren't you? As it turned out, he wasn't. Because of that and those 6 research papers, I discovered the theological library at Lexington Theological Seminary, which I not only used during that spring, but all the way through my master's and doctoral work. I learned how to document in the correct way footnotes that would be acceptable to my professors at Southern Seminary. I learned how to do independent research, and to this day, I still utilize some of the research that I learned doing those 6 research papers. Surely, you were expecting too much, weren't you, Dr. Mallow? I want you to imagine with me this morning that it's the first day of class and you're taking a class. Might be a college class, might be a graduate class, vocational education class, a continuing education class. And you walk in, and on that first day of class, you receive from the professor what we usually would receive, and that would be a syllabus. It would tell you what was going to be expected of you during that course, when the tests were going to be, when the final was going to be, the research papers that you might have to do, some project that you might have to finish up, and you would look and you would know what was required. We walk into this class, it's Christianity 101. And we get in the room and we sit down, and the professor walks in, and it's Jesus Christ. And he looks at each and every one of us and says, I'm so glad that you have come to take this course. I don't want you to take this course just to be taking it. I want you to take this course so that you can live it out. I don't want you to take this course just so you can make a grade. I want you to take this course so you, ladies and gentlemen, can make a difference. There will be demands in this course. They will be well worth your while. I'm glad you're going to take, and I hope that you will live out and take with you what we learned together in Christianity 101. And then Jesus gave out the syllabus. But he didn't give it out in paper form. It wasn't hard copy. He decided that he would utilize some symbols. And in our class, the first thing that Jesus does, he takes a cross. And he looks at all the students and says, I want you to carry it. There's something else in this syllabus, Jesus says. And we looked, and to our amazement, he took a yoke And he said, see this yoke? I want you to wear it. So there's a cross. I want you to carry it. Here's the yoke. I want you to wear it. Here's a towel. I want you to use it. And along with that towel, he included a basin. And that was the syllabus. He took a cross, he took a yoke, he took a towel. Surely he is asking too much of us, isn't he? He took a cross and he said, I want you to carry it. If there's anybody who wants to follow me, he must take up his cross daily and follow me. We know a lot about the cross. More than any other symbol, it signifies Christianity. More than any other symbol, it signifies Jesus Christ. It symbolizes for us sacrifice and love and suffering. We know about the cross. We have crosses in our church, and there's a cross on our spire. There are cross logos that we put on our clothing, on our hats, on stationery. Crosses are made into jewelry, and we wear them around our neck, and all of that is fine. But Jesus says, not only do I want you to know something about the cross, I want you to carry your cross. And that's going to take some sacrifice. It took a lot of sacrifice on the part of Jesus. And so he's saying, if you take up your cross, it's going to cost you some effort and some time and the utilization of your talents and your potential. Sometimes when I was in college or graduate school, there would be certain courses that were extra challenging. And I knew that in order to get the most out of that course that I was supposed to get out of it, and also to make a grade, because I'm trying to get in doctoral work, that I was going to have to put forth some effort. That sometimes when my fraternity brothers were doing something else, I needed to be studying and writing papers and getting ready. So it cost some time, and it cost some effort, and it cost some money. Somebody had to pay for that course. Some of it came through scholarship. Some of it came from my parents, a lot of it. Some of it came from what I did as I worked on the farm. It cost, but it was worth it. But there was sacrifice involved. Take up your cross, Jesus said. It's going to cost you something. What have you sacrificed for your church? What have you sacrificed for the Lord Jesus Christ? What has your Christianity cost you? Well, there's sacrifice involved in the cross, but there's also this daily living. Take up your cross not just once when you walk down a church aisle, make a public profession of faith, and get baptized, Jesus said. Take up your cross daily. Not just at first when you accept me as Savior and put it aside and don't call on me until it's time to die and go to heaven. I want you to take up your cross daily. I am with you always. That means all the days. Take up your cross daily. Not just on Sunday. Not just on special holidays. Ash Wednesday, Maundy, Thursday, Easter, Christmas. All the days, take up your cross. This is a daily proposition, he said. One of the tests that I've had to deal with in my life is a test that all of us have to deal with, and it's getting older. Have you noticed? We get older every day. You're older right now than you were when you got up this morning. I mean, it's just going to happen. You can't stop it. You might try to slow it down a little bit, but we're all going to get older. When I hit 40 years old, I thought it was over. It was just older. It wasn't over, but it was, people would say, gosh, you're 40, you're over the hill. I guess now I'm over the mountain or something. I don't know. But anyway, I did okay at 40, but when I was 42, my son, John Robert, who's here today, came up to me. He wasn't very old at that point, and he said, "Dad, you're 42. He said, "Do you realize that your life is more than half over?" Thank you, son, just what I needed as I go into my 42nd year. But you know, he was correct, because the life expectancy in the United States right now is 78.9 years. That's the average life expectancy. That's in the United States. For women, it's 81.3. For us guys, it's 76.3. You see, when I would take a course like Dr. Mallow's course, I knew exactly when the midterm was going to happen, and I knew exactly when final exams were going to occur. But in the course of this life, ladies and gentlemen, we don't know when midterm is coming. We don't know when final exams will arrive. Don't you see why it's important to take up your cross daily and follow Jesus Christ? He took a cross. He wants us to carry it. Surely he is asking too much, isn't he? He also took a yoke. "Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden," he said, "and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. For my yoke is easy. My burden is light." Those of you with a farming background, or even if you don't have an agricultural background, you know that a yoke is a frame. It will actually fit around, let's just say for our purposes, an oxen's neck. It is also attached to some mechanism of production like a plow. And one of the reasons you have a yoke around an animal like an oxen is it's for control. If you put a plow behind an oxen and there's no yoke and turn that oxen out in the lower 40, he's going to mess your field up big time. But if you have a yoke where the farmer master can control it, you will have a well-plowed field. So part of the reason that we have a yoke is for control. Have you ever noticed sometimes that when we try to live our lives without the yoke of Jesus Christ, we pretty much end up making a shambles out of it? We might do okay for a while, but we'll kind of wallow around in the lower 40 and we'll royally mess life up. Jesus said, "Look, I love you. You don't have to do this thing alone. Take my yoke upon you." So it's about control. But even more than that, it's about cooperation and partnership. You can yoke together two beasts of burden, and they can do more together than either one of them could ever do apart. You can yoke together several Christians in a church, and that church can do together in cooperation with one another more than any single Christian could ever imagine doing. One of the things that I detested most in school was when the professor got up and said, "I'm going to give you a group assignment." I didn't like group assignments. You know why? Because most of the time there'd be 5 or 7 people in the group, and just 1 or 2 of us would be willing to do all the work because we were going to go into graduate school and we needed to get an A. And these other people, they were good people, but you know, they really didn't care. In fact, they would say, "Man, we're glad we're in your group because we're going to get an easy A. Thanks a lot." And so we would stay up all night, a couple of us, and we would make a good a presentation as we possibly could, and most of the time we would pull an A, and so would these other people. They would stand up there so sweet and nice. "Don't you like our Come on, man." They would get an A too. I didn't like group assignments usually, but every now and then, I got put in a group where everybody wanted to do their best. That didn't happen very often, but whenever it did, like it did in Dr. Glenn Henson's Classics of Christian Devotional course at Southern Seminary, it was amazing. Our group was asked to do a presentation on Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk, and everybody was excited. We read his books. We wrote a review on the Seven-Story Mountain. We spent an entire day with the monks at Gethsemane in silence and learned so much. We found an old film, black and white film, of Thomas Merton, and that presentation was excellent. We didn't do it for a grade. We weren't worried about a grade. We wanted to know about Thomas Merton and to share it with other people. But sometimes there are people in a group and they don't carry their share of a load. Did you ever take a course like that? That happens in church sometimes. Just a few people end up sacrificially doing most of the work. And a lot of other folks who really love the church and want the church to always be there, they just kind of come and get served every now and then. But could you imagine what would happen in a church, in any church, if everybody got excited to do his or her best and partner together and yoke together? Incidentally, that phrase there, take my yoke upon you because my yoke is easy, in the Greek it means it's well fitted. It's designed specifically for you. You are in this church for a reason. Matthew Henry said that the yoke of Jesus is lined with love. And you are here for a reason, and if you will take that reason to be yoked with everybody else, can you imagine what could be accomplished for the kingdom of God? Take a yoke, wear it. God, surely he's asking too much, isn't he? Take a towel and use it. It's interesting in John's gospel, when it talks about the foot washing of the disciples, it gives us a hint at the thought pattern, the thought process of Jesus. It says, Jesus, knowing that everything was from God, that he was doing God's will, that he was going to God, he had total control. He could have called down angels. He could have said, forget all of this stuff about sacrifice and Gethsemane and Calvary. They're eating supper together. And in those days, as you can imagine, in Palestine, there were no surfaced roads, so there were dusty roads when it was dry. There were muddy roads, squishy roads when it was raining. They wore sandals, and it was just proper etiquette, hospitality. Anytime you came into a home, came into a building, came into a synagogue, there would be a servant there with a towel and a basin and would wash one's dirty feet. Maybe they were in such despair and discouragement on that particular night, no one thought to wash the feet or to have a basin there. And it was in the middle of the service that Jesus got up and took off his outer garment and tied a towel around his waist. And he went to each disciple one by one and he washed their feet. Dr. Buddy Sheridan, who's preached here in this pulpit, one of my mentors, I'd like to tell the story about the time that he was in seminary, New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, where he attended, and a gentleman by the name of Dr. Chester Quarles came to seminary and preached and taught, and toward the end of his time there on campus, he gathered together all the ministerial students. And he looked at them and he said, I want to tell you all what's wrong with the church today. We have a guest complex. We're not to be guests, he said. We're to be servants. servants of the suffering servant. Take up your towel and use it. Surely he is asking too much, isn't he? I'm glad I took Dr. Vernon Mallow's course. I continue to utilize things that I learned in that course on Johannine literature all the way through college, all the way through graduate school, all the way through sermon preparation throughout my minister career, all the way up to this day. I'm glad he expected that much of me. I hope each and every one of you will seriously give effort to Christianity 101, and hope that you'll follow the syllabus of Jesus. A cross, he wants you to carry it. A yoke, he wants you to wear it. A towel, he wants you to use it to serve. A cross, a yoke, a towel. Surely he is asking too much, don't you think? Surely he is asking too much, isn't he?